Saw is one of the most well-known and profitable horror franchises in history, but that doesn't mean that it's exactly easy to understand. Let's try to make sense of Jigsaw's entire timeline, explained in as painless a way as possible. When we first meet John Kramer in 2004's Saw, he's already made a name for himself as the infamous Jigsaw Killer, a sick, sadistic genius who tests the limits of human morality. However, his motives and backstory aren't fully explored until the sequels, which are peppered with flashbacks to Kramer's past. In Saw 4, we learn that everything started when John's wife, Jill Tuck, the founder of a local rehab clinic, becomes pregnant with their son, Gideon. John is over the moon and begins creating a life for the child. In his workshop, he shows Jill a homemade crib, as well as the franchise's iconic puppet. But happiness doesn't last long. Late one evening, a pregnant Jill is locking up her clinic when she's held at knife point by the junkie Cecil Adams. The door handle slams into her stomach, causing her to miscarry. Saw 6 further reveals that Amanda Young, who later becomes one of John's devout disciples, was the one who coerced Cecil into stealing methadone from the clinic.
You killed their child. You know it, and I know it.
According to Jill in Saw 4, John received his stage 4 cancer diagnosis from Dr. Lawrence Gordon soon after the loss of their son. This event was expanded upon in 2017's Jigsaw, when former Army medic Logan Nelson returns to medical school and begins a residency at the same hospital employing Gordon. Due to his negligence, Nelson mislabeled Kramer's x-rays, delaying John's brain tumor diagnosis. Saw 6 introduced the health insurance executive William Easton, whose company Umbrella declined several of John's coverage claims. While Kramer suggests participation in experimental gene therapy to treat his illness, Easton asserts that nothing will help at this point. This series of events culminates in John's suicide attempt, driving his car off a cliff. Despite suffering severe injuries, Kramer survives and gains a new appreciation for life. Thus, a killer is born, and his life's work is set in motion. According to Logan's third-act villain speech in 2017's Jigsaw, he reveals how he was the 5th player in one of John's very first traps. The rules were simple. 5 people must confess their crimes or die. But the catch is that regardless of their intent, every player's actions resulted in death. For example, the character Mitch caused the death of John Kramer's nephew by selling him a motorcycle with faulty brakes. John's neighbor Anna suffocated her newborn baby and pinned the crime on her husband, who later hanged himself.
How horrible to have to live with such a thing.
The first round of the game involves metal collars, helmets made from buckets, and a wall of table saws. While the others free themselves by making a blood sacrifice, Logan doesn't wake up in time, and Blade starts slicing into his back. But John saves Logan, giving a second chance after determining his mix-up of the x-rays didn't warrant his death. John takes Logan under his wing, with the doctor helping to fabricate the reverse bear trap that's used in the characters Amanda, Detective Mark Hoffman, and Jill. Believing Logan had clearly suffered enough, with him still reeling with PTSD from the Iraq War, John's rare display of empathy further endeared him to fans of the Saw films. During a flashback sequence in Saw 4, John kidnapped Cecil during a bustling celebration for the Chinese Year of the Pig, after donning a pig mask and dousing a rag with chloroform. After Kramer brings Cecil back to his workshop, he straps him into a metal chair and gives Cecil a choice. He can either bleed out from his wrist and ankle restraints, or press his face into a device made out of kitchen knives. Cecil actually manages to rise to the occasion and frees himself, but when he lunges at John, he tumbles into a wire cage. The original Saw also revealed several other early traps, including a game involving a safe, shards of glass, a candle, and a man's body smothered in flammable goo. Later, Detective Allison Carey finds a penlight seemingly left by the killer at the crime scene, which links back to Dr. Gordon. As revealed in Saw 5, Detective Mark Hoffman planted this evidence to throw law enforcement off the trail. We also witness Amanda's iconic reverse bear trap test. In further flashbacks, Amanda admits to feeling rehabilitated after surviving her game and becomes John's star pupil. It is even revealed in Saw 3 that she assisted him in setting up the bathroom game for Adam and Gordon in the first film. Saw 5 reveals Detective Mark Hoffman's backstory, which opens with a gruesome adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's The Pit and the Pendulum. Seth Baxter is bound to a table and can only escape the deadly pendulum by pressing buttons inside 2 separate boxes that will crush his limbs. But there's a problem. This trap is inescapable. We later discover that Seth murdered Hoffman's sister, Angelina, but Seth's original 25-year prison sentence is reduced to 5 due to a technicality. Hoffman takes matters into his own hands, hoping to frame Jigsaw for Seth's murder.
She was my only family. He didn't deserve a chance. He was an animal.
Everybody deserves a chance.
Sometime later, when Hoffman is heading home, he meets John Kramer in an elevator, who stabs a syringe into his neck. Hoffman wakes up, tied to a chair with a shotgun pressed against his chin. But his test is not like the others, with John pulling the trigger himself and driving Hoffman to the edge. As Detective Peter Strahm discovers, Hoffman has been involved in every Jigsaw murder since, as well as countless early games, including the opening of Saw 2. At this point in the timeline, popular author Bobby Dagen, a central character in Saw the Final Chapter, makes the media rounds while promoting his book about his alleged experience surviving one of Jigsaw's attacks. But things aren't what they seem. Before he was famous, Bobby wore lots of denim and frequented a local pub. In between pints of beer, a news segment caught his eye, a Jigsaw survivor coming forward to share their truth. At this moment, Bobby decided to write a fake story and exploit the tragedy of Jigsaw's victims as part of a money-grubbing scheme. Set at an undetermined time before the first film, Kramer approaches Bobby during a book signing, seemingly to get Bobby's autograph. Dressed like Eminem from 8 Mile, Kramer hints that he knows about Dagen's trickery. According to flashbacks in Saw 6, Jill meets Amanda outside John's laboratory around this same time, implying that Jill knew about John's games all along, yet did nothing to stop them. John slips a key into her hand and vows that she'll be released from his work soon enough. Jill wears this key around her neck, which plays a crucial role later in the franchise. The original Saw movie serves as the present-day starting point of the franchise, and is considered instrumental in igniting the torture porn craze of the 2000s, with its gritty color palette, fast cuts, and nauseating brutality. However, unlike most of the sequels, the story is pretty straightforward. Struggling photographer Adam and oncologist Dr. Lawrence Gordon are trapped in a bathroom, where they must atone for their sins. It's essentially an escape room with buckets of blood.
He doesn't want us to cut through our chains. He wants us to cut through our feet.
Meanwhile, Detective Tapp is convinced that Gordon is the man behind the madness, and becomes obsessed after the death of his partner, Detective Singh. His paranoia ultimately gets him killed, while a complicated web of deceit unravels, entangling hospital orderly Zepp and Gordon's wife and daughter. In desperation to save his family, Gordon does the unthinkable and, in one of the series' best moments, saws off his own foot. While it seems unlikely that Gordon survived, we learn in Saw the Final Chapter that Gordon managed to cauterize his leg and became one of Jigsaw's accomplices. He contributed to many of the film's traps, including the Venus flytrap in Saw 2 and Hoffman's test over the course of Saw 4, 6, and the final chapter. Outside of the first film, Saw 2 is generally the easiest sequel to follow along. However, the imagery is far more stomach-turning than in the first. Once you witness the needle pit, you'll never sleep again. In the film, Detective Carey teams up with Detective Matthews to find his son Daniel and uncover the location of Jigsaw's latest creation. The events of the film largely center around a halfway house-style game, partly constructed by Detective Hoffman, as revealed in Saw 5, featuring players with criminal backgrounds. In twisted fashion, Jigsaw puts Daniel in the middle as a way to crawl under Matthews' skin.
Oh yes. There will be blood.
As fans know, the Saw franchise loves to toy with audiences' perception of time, and Saw 2 flips viewers' expectations on their head. When Matthews thinks he's uncovered the location of the game, several key reveals follow. First, it's only a decoy house. Second, the game actually took place an unknown amount of time beforehand. And finally, in one of the series' most shocking twists, Daniel is revealed to be in a safe place, just as Jigsaw promised, gasping for air inside a safe that's been sitting next to Matthews the whole time. The problem? Matthews fails to heed Kramer's simple instructions to just sit and talk, resulting in his imprisonment in the bathroom from the first film by Amanda. Saw 3 and 4 take place concurrently, and this is where things start to get confusing, as numerous storylines with Hoffman, Amanda, Detective Carey, Detective Matthews, newcomers Perez and Strahm, and SWAT member Rigg all overlap. Flashbacks in Saw 5 and 6 reveal Hoffman's involvement in setting up several of the film's traps. The opening of 4 chronicles John's autopsy, during which the medical examiner discovers a new tape. Chronologically, the first scenes of 3 follow, picking up right after Saw 2, with Matthews chained in the bathroom. He mutilates his foot and crawls away, only to be captured by Hoffman and put on literal ice. Meanwhile, Amanda kidnaps Dr. Lynn Denlin upon Dr. Gordon's suggestion for what becomes her final test. Lynn performs an emergency craniectomy on Kramer, for if he dies, she will too. Amanda somehow has time to kidnap Carey as well, and hooks her into a ribcage trap. But it's another inescapable game, and Carey perishes. Meanwhile, Lynn's husband Jeff learns to forgive those involved in his son's death after making his way through the factory where everyone is being held. Moments later, Amanda shoots Lynn, with Lynn falling into Jeff's arms. 4 days later, Rig helps discover Carrie's body, but soon finds himself trapped in his own game, which tests his obsession with helping others. However, he doesn't learn his lesson, and his choices lead to Matthew's death. Saw 5 continues right after the previous 2 films. Strom, while trapped by Hoffman in the storage room with Jigsaw's body, discovers a hidden passageway and his own tape. Despite Jigsaw's warning to stay put, he follows along the corridor, is captured, and has his head confined inside a glass box that's slowly filling with water. Strom immediately goes into survival mode, removing a pen from his pocket and stabbing himself in the trachea, which prevents him from drowning. Hoffman is noticeably surprised that Strom survived and sets his sights on framing him for the latest murderous rampage. In the next scene, Jill meets with John's lawyer, Bernie Feldman, and receives a box that she unlocks with the key around her neck. Inside, she finds 6 numbered file folders, a manila envelope, and the reverse bear trap. Meanwhile, a disturbing game ensues while Strom uncovers Hoffman's storied past.
We were all supposed to die. You were supposed to be the hero.
In addition, Special Agent Dan Erickson is introduced and led on a wild goose chase to the location of the latest game. He's seemingly convinced of Strom's involvement, with Jill also claiming that Strom has been following her for quite some time. Strom falls deeper into the abyss, and in the finale, tussles with Hoffman in a secured room where the walls narrow, ultimately crushing him to death. Where previous installments of the Saw franchise address police corruption, Saw 6 veers into a fang-toothed commentary on the healthcare system. It begins with Strom assuredly dead, while Hoffman continues his bloodthirsty rampage. William Easton, the health insurance agent who denied John Kramer's claims, is a rat trapped in a macabre maze. He's left to endure various tests involving his lawyer, his star employees, a journalist named Pamela, revealed to be William's sister, and finally, a woman and her young son, whose father died soon after William's company denied him coverage. The flashbacks make all of this somewhat unbelievable, even if the carousel test is a franchise standout. Jill's file folder number 6 reveals that Jigsaw's last wish is to finally put Hoffman to the test. Jill happily carries out his plans, as Special Agents Perez and Erickson remain hot on Hoffman's trail. However, the 2 feds meet an unfortunate fate when Hoffman attacks them. But that's when Jill catches up with him, fastens the bear trap to his head, and leaves him for dead. Or so we think. As the 60-second timer counts down, Hoffman rams the front of the trap into the bars covering the room's windows and slithers free, setting up his last attempt at revenge. If the series hadn't already jumped the shark, Saw the Final Chapter, aka Saw 3D, seals the deal. For many fans, several plot points are hard to swallow. First, Dr. Gordon is very much alive, and yet another secret Jigsaw accomplice. Second, the first trap, which is staged in a bustling town square, is way too theatrical compared to previous traps. Third, Hoffman's vendetta against Jill is arguably strange. The main plot follows author Bobby Dagen, who's promoting his self-penned memoir, only to become Hoffman's latest target. Of course, Bobby's story about surviving a game involving meat hooks is fabricated and serves as the basis of his final test. In order to save his wife, he must insert meat hooks into his pectoral muscles and hoist himself up into the air. He fails, and his wife is cooked alive. Hoffman appears to have the upper hand, particularly when he kills Jill with the bear trap, but he quickly gets his comeuppance when 3 masked pigs attack him, one of whom is Dr. Gordon. Hoffman is then locked into the same bathroom from the original film.
Game over.
It's a cool ending, but it's arguably undone by an overly complicated and needlessly nihilistic storyline. If you've made it this far into the franchise, bless your heart, but 2017's Jigsaw somehow further distorts the timeline. As previously mentioned, the actual game takes place a decade before the present-day timeline. There are a few breadcrumbs that'll help orient you, but you have to be paying very close attention to detail. While working as a medical examiner assistant alongside Logan Nelson, the character Eleanor secretly runs a popular Jigsaw fan site while collecting some of the killer's devices, including the reverse bear trap. One evening, Eleanor brings Logan to her studio and reveals a cyclone-type contraption, allegedly undiscovered by the cops. Detective Holleran suspects that Logan is the killer, while Logan eyes Holleran. The premise is outrageous, but it generally works. Logan and Eleanor follow clues that lead them to the Tuck family pig farm, the location of the game. Acting on a hunch, Holleran is right behind them and gets into a hand-to-hand altercation. Holleran and Logan wake up with dog collars secured to their necks. To survive the trap, all they have to do is confess, but their egos are strong. But Logan's complicity in Kramer's schemes since the early days is among the franchise's most enthralling revelations. As absurd as it is, we ask ourselves, how could John possibly have had this many secret accomplices? But at this point in the franchise, you just have to accept it. Chris Rock's Detective Banks has a line early on in Spiral in which he claims that Jigsaw never targeted cops, but detectives Matthews and Singh would disagree. That aside, Spiral from the Book of Saw has something profound to say about law enforcement. After all, police brutality is all over social media these days. This latest entry takes place an undisclosed amount of time after Jigsaw, with Detective Banks attempting to follow his father's footsteps at a local precinct, but can't seem to get out from under the shadow of his past. 12 years earlier, he reported another cop for dirty dealings. Afterwards, when he was investigating a crime and called for backup, no one returned his call, and he was shot. Banks is tasked with showing William Schenk the ropes, and they quickly begin investigating a series of crimes that bear a striking resemblance to Jigsaw's games.
If that Spiral is what I think it is.
Jigsaw?
Wait, I thought the Jigsaw killer was dead.
Is Jigsaw alive? Or is it just another copycat? The finale is heart-pounding, from the trap that puppeteers Banks' father like a marionette to the reveal of the real killer. Details about Saw X are few. What we do know is the events take place sometime between the 2004 original film and Saw 2. In the official trailer, John Kramer travels to Mexico for an experimental surgery, but it turns out to be a scam, and his tumor isn't removed. With only months left to live, he returns to his work and targets those medical personnel who scammed him. From a fake former patient to the doctor herself, everyone will have to pay the price for their lies. Via the official Saw account, on the website formerly known as Twitter, longtime Saw producer Oren Kules shared, "John is absolutely the protagonist in this movie. This is John Kramer's story as a human." Director Kevin Grudert also stated, "The film feels in a lot of great ways like the older Saw movies." As far as we can tell, he's absolutely correct. The traps presented in the trailer tease the raw grittiness and merciless brutality found in those early installments. And because the film takes place so early in the timeline, that means that Amanda returns, seen in her signature pig mask and cloak. What role she will play exactly is unclear, but here's hoping she has enough screen time to justify her presence.